Hi, welcome to the Joyful Rebels podcast. We've got Claire and Donna Thomas here, your mother daughter duo. And today we've got an interesting episode, if I do say so myself. We're going to be focusing on a topic of mental strengths. So, we're going to talk about 5 mental strengths that people most wish for. Okay, what do we mean by that?
Hmm.
This all comes down to a study that's not published yet, but we've got a psychologist who asked 9,000 people. Okay, so not a small sample size. What character strength do you wished that you had to help with your mental health? What
Hmm.
character strength do you wish that you had for better mental well being? So, you listening, I ask you that question. Take a moment or two. Which character strength do you wish that you had to improve your mental health? So,
Hmm.
take a few seconds. There might be some that stick out to you right away. Um, to be fair, the people in this study had a laundry list of ones to look at, and we're asking you to go off the top of your head. But uh, this question was open, and thousands of people were able to interpret it how they wanted. And some people had a strategy of, well, I already feel mentally strong, so I want to pick a strength that will help me maintain that. Or other people were dealing with psychological problems and they picked a strength that would help them get through the issues that they had. And you might be saying to yourself, okay, what would you expect? Love. I want more kindness,
Mhm.
maybe spirituality or connecting with other people that can help to impact your mental health. Uh, Being more positive or having more optimism or being more curious. All these things one might expect, but the top 5 answers are actually pretty interesting
Hmm.
because it's none of the ones that I just mentioned.
Hmm.
And so in today's episode, we are going to talk about the top 5 mental strengths that most people would wish for to improve their mental health. And not only that, we're going to talk about them. We're going to give some strategies on how you can get more of those in your life.
Yeah.
So,
Wow. I'm like grunting over here. The
mm.
sound of it will be because I'm like, uh-huh, uh-huh. I do really love this. You guys, Joyful Rebels listening here, that this is an early, this is not even published yet. And I love that we're talking about it now that we've gotten a sneak preview of some really new insights into this area. And that again, if people are feeling pretty well, then they want to maintain that. That seems logical to me. Or if you're coming from a pain point, then you want to find what's the biggest one that's going to like pull me out of the trench. So that I like that as a jump off point to where it is. But then I was totally surprised on these two. And I was like, this is incredible. So there's 5 of them. And coming in at number 5, which is super interesting. That really forgiveness clocked in at number 5, which feels big. To me, it feels kind of heavy, and the way it's described is just that mental burden of holding on to resentment and anger and hurt feelings that can be overwhelming. It can grow with time. The way that it presents in me is like that's the kind of thing that surfaces to my consciousness when I'm showering, when I'm doing some like moving meditation. I'm not thinking about nothing else is expected of me. I'm not on my phone. I'm not addressing anybody else. And if something is unresolved, it just bubbles right back up. So the times in my life where I've had, just some forgiveness issues, or I haven't forgiven someone for something that they did, real or perceived. I'll put that out there. It's just that's my interpretation of it, that it is a burden. And I love the language around that because it has felt heavy. And the challenge of it is that it's not a one and done. So forgiveness isn't like I have forgiven you. And for some people, they'll find relief with that. More so, it's people have we need to do it over and over again because it comes in layers. And I'm not sure if you're listening, if you've felt that as well, that is, depending on how deep the hurt is, it might take a while to really get a chance to go, okay, I'm making a decision to forgive. And whatever Pinterest meme it was, and I don't know who said it, but it's the, you know, holding on to a grudge or lack of forgiveness is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to be hurt.
Mm.
Like this is a thing we do for us to forgive. But forgiving someone else means that we get to lessen our mental burden. And what is a way to overcome it, a strategy is to pull the lens back. And I think that is something that comes up frequently for me. When I'm in the nitty gritty, I have a hard time seeing the landscape. I'm just in it. I'm in the raw feelings. I'm in the exact situation and the details and how I was wronged and blah, blah, blah. When I can pull the focus back a little bit and I get a broader sense, I can see around the edges, that allows me to see that the person that I am looking to forgive, that they are a complex person too. And they have lots of different areas and places where they can grow and they can transform, and they have all this opportunity. Like I'm dealing with another human, like me with all my faults. That's them too. So it's not about looking at the other person as though they're all bad. And you know what, you guys, I'm not for a minute going to say that you don't have situations that may seem that way. So I'm not suggesting that's for you to parse out and to see if that's something that you could say, well, it's something I'm going to need to do over and over again. I want to release this mental burden. And I also am looking at this person as they're flawed just like me. So if they made bad decisions or they did whatever, like, we're all in the same boat. I just happen to be in this seat holding this oar. So if peace and ease, which has always been something, Claire, you and I talk about, like everything we do moves toward just having a life that's got this joyful peace and ease. I'm not holding on so tightly to everything. I'm not afraid of conflict. I'm not, because I think that eventually leads to some peace and ease and just to have this really just great life. And sometimes it just means that I'm acknowledging that we're all in this together and there is more similarities than differences, and I'm going to have to do it over and over again. So forgiveness clocked in at number 5. That's a big one. I don't know. Does it get any lighter or easier? Maybe, maybe not.
Yeah, but you know what? When you started talking, I immediately was reminded of another podcast topic, a recent topic of humility.
Yeah,
Because one of our tips for working on humility or returning to humility is to acknowledge that we don't know what we know about someone else is less than what we do know, right? They're either
yes,
showing us what they want us to know or just acknowledging there's so much more. Like you said, the complexity of the human existence. And so being able to think of this person who you are looking to forgive as a peer and how that
yeah.
can change the landscape a bit. So that definitely brought me back to what we were talking about humility. So forgiveness, number 5. Number 4 of a mental strength that people wished for is creativity. People want to be more creative. They want more ideas because if we're talking about improving mental health, maybe the focus is on um, obstacles that we have.
Hmm.
And we want to be able to think of more solutions. Um, and the more solutions you have, right? So sometimes we can get a fixed mindset. And I know I've done this as well, where if I have a problem, I need to think of the best solution. And that's the only thing that I'm going to focus on then. This is the one, this is the thing I need to do. And my focus kind of narrows and I lose sight of other pathways, other doorways I can enter to go in
Hmm.
to solve certain issues. And so when we're talking about a science-based strategy, if we want to look at being more creative to improve mental health, something that we can do is work on developing what's called divergent thinking. And so all that means is when we've got a problem and we're trying to problem solve, come up with multiple potential solutions for it instead of just focusing on, oh, I need to find the right one. Because when we're looking for a solution, we're going to come up with multiple ones. But for me, I'm at least laser focused on pros, cons, pros, cons. Oh, this one's the best. I need to do this one. And again, it's just a rigid, fixed way of thinking about it. Instead, can we brainstorm and really kind of open the box a little bit? Okay, what are some other ways that I can look at this? Maybe that's even enlisting someone else, getting a different perspective on it, but just being willing to be more open minded because there might be solutions out there that you completely miss. They just fly
Yeah.
right over your head because the first one that seemed right, you just jumped on. And again, I am super guilty of this. So this is one that I'm going to be working on. But one mental strength that people wish for, number 4, would be creativity.
God, you nailed it for that, for me on that one. Again, if I think of like, I think this is the best way, that just means it's, for me, generally speaking, it's the most familiar. That
Mm,
doesn't mean it's the best way. So if at least I have a couple other things to pick from, I can experiment because I do like to experiment. because I'm always surprised and sometimes absolutely delighted. I'm like, and I laugh. I have a moment where I'm like, that was funny. I didn't even think of that. That's awesome. Love it. Okay. So as we're moving along, the third thing we're looking at is perseverance. So perseverance, being able to overcome obstacles, stay the course. This one didn't surprise me for some reason because this has been a topic that is very top of mind for us. We talk about consistency a lot. I think those two are woven together, and the ability of stick-to-itiveness, which sometimes I feel that's in short supply. And I'll say sometimes in myself. Sometimes when I look around the world, it's like if we hang out in this a little bit longer, we might get a little further along the path to where we want to go. So perseverance and what that means and how to celebrate it and develop it at the same time. Where it's showing up for me is that in strength training. Like if anybody else is strength training, Claire, we have this thing in common where we're lifting heavier. And for everybody that's listening, if you're a woman and you're 30 and over, just lift more. And if you're under 30, lift more. So that, and it's long game. It is long game because you won't see the benefit. You won't see anything externally, probably for a while, but internally, there's all these things that are happening. So a science-based way to develop perseverance is to celebrate the small wins along the way and instead of like the finish line.
Mhm.
Again, it's not the big ta-da. It's like what happens along the way. I was so encouraged this week as I was lifting when my coach pointed out to me that the weight I was using for some of this overhead, like these snatches and cleans and all this crazy stuff, which I'm loving, the weight I was using was heavier. He said, this your warm up, the weight you were using before to gain strength is now your warm up weight. Did you know that? And I was like, no, I did not know that. Like, what a great coach to be able to point that out to me. Because sometimes I'm so in the process, I'm just moving along, I'm doing my thing, but I needed to stop for a moment and go, that's cool. That is a measurable thing, and that would be tangible, but there's also the intangible stuff. How do I feel inside after, how accomplished do I feel when I do something? Those little things that keep me going, I'm way more attuned to right now. I'm way more attuned to. So I feel like I'm developing this perseverance as we go in order to create more of a pathway of staying with it. I just want to
Mhm.
stay with it longer and rewarding myself when I feel like I have those moments. It's not about the destination. Let me sum it up this way as a scientific way to develop it. It's not about the destination. I'm not quite sure unless you're doing an event or there is an end game, maybe. But for most of us, it's going to be like, how hard did you try? Did I try my best? Some of the language I use is, can I put my head down on the pillow tonight knowing that I gave my best
Mhm.
in whatever that was? Because I know when I'm given a C plus effort, I know it. And it could look okay, but I know it. And so that personal honesty of, am I trying my best? Did I give it what I had for today? Did I give it what I had? And that's going to ebb and flow. So, and then I'm going to reward myself with that. And even if it's just taking a moment and feeling it, but even better, we've talked about the wins journal. That one went right
Woo.
into my wins journal. I even posted about it. I'm gonna take a second and think of this little win. Like, what's your personal win? And then it went into my wins journal so I don't forget it. So I
Mhm.
get a chance to have that compound. And so again, when life takes over, all the other chatter of my world goes in there, that I don't forget that I want these things to stand out. And if I can develop my own personal highlight reel of some of the ways that I'm developing this and celebrating my wins, that's way more important than anything I posted on social media, because that's the stuff that matters to me.
So much good stuff there.
Yeah.
And even what you just finished with, that you're developing this highlight reel that you can focus on, because we know that what you focus on, that's going to crowd out any of that negative thinking. So if we're talking about wanting to improve mental health, and one way to do it, to persevere, to be able to stick to it, that consistency. I mean, I feel like we have mentioned it so many times, and yet it's still so important. And you're right, we're both in this strength training game. And just a shout out to you. Anytime I hear that you're going up in weights or doing this overhead stuff, and just to remember where you were at coming back
Mm.
from rehabbing not one, but then the other shoulder. I mean, it's incredible to see what can happen when you stick to it.
Yep.
Like that's what it is. Like the proof is in the pudding. Like you can, if I'm using that correctly, that seems like an old phrase, but
What are
it's
you, 100 years
yeah.
old?
I'm like, wait a second, where did that come from?
That is true. And I
But it
didn't I didn't think of that layer. Like I have come a long way, and it's not boastful. It's that is a real statement, that all the little tiny ways to just keep showing up can get you over here, and I couldn't have dreamed of it. I just did it. So shout out to me, but also shout out to just persevering and staying in the game and giving your effort, because maybe you guys can't dream of what it's going to look like, but the feelings along the way, I haven't been suffering. I've been enjoying the whole ride.
And again, just pointing out that it's not, if you're just focusing on what your end game, your end goal is in something, you're probably going to find that if and when you do reach that, you're not going to get that satisfaction that you thought you were, or that lifelong, really lasting happiness about it. The trick, the life hack is to find that joy in the little steps along the way. So being able to celebrate any of the little wins, even if it's, hey, I stuck with this thing for 5 days in a row, for 3 days of the week, for a
Yes.
month. It doesn't matter what it is. We're not giving you this metric. It has to be X times X amount. No, it's, did you feel like you stuck with it even when you didn't feel motivated, even when you didn't want to? Again, consistency, way, way, way more important than motivation, which is going to
Mm.
ebb and flow and not always be there. So, perseverance, I'm also not surprised that this was on the list at number 3 of mental strengths that people wished for. Number 2, bravery. Okay. I like this one.
Mm.
People want to be braver. And it can be really hard to be brave, to move out of your comfort zone.
Mm.
Uh, Comfort zones, they feel good, right? We can get used to things. So to be able to step out of one's comfort zone, to challenge that, or maybe you're doing something that's unpopular or just different than what you would normally do, right? Because a lot of us, we feel like, oh, if I've been doing something one way for a really long time, I have to keep doing it that way. I find myself telling my kids that all the time. And because, so many times I'm telling them things that I'm also telling to myself,
Hmm.
but you get to choose and it's okay. You don't have to be a certain way just because you've been a certain way. And I love that. It's freeing, but it's going to take some bravery. And
Mm.
no one's going to say that that's easy at all, but it is one pathway to feeling more authentic. And we did a whole summer group kind of course type thing about building confidence. And confidence we can think of as going kind of hand in hand with being brave, maybe. Like if you, so what am I trying to say here? If you want to increase your bravery, one thing that you can do is focus on the outcome of what you're going to do. Because sometimes if we want to accomplish something, it can feel scary and we might not have the confidence to do it. Again, whether that's trying something new, going against what you've done before, it can feel really scary. But maybe focus on the outcome. For example, maybe what you end up doing is going to be helping someone. And so to focus on the ripple effects of what you're going to do can
Mm.
end up making you feel, oh, yeah, wait, no, I can do this. Even if you doing something can just provide an example to someone else who thought that that was not something that was achievable, attainable, or something that they could do. So don't forget that these things that you're working on, even if these are really small steps that we're doing, little life hacks that we're peppering in, things that you're trying on, looking at the evidence, did this work for me? Others around you are noticing, and whether they can
Hmm.
pinpoint exactly what you're doing or not, like you're growing your light here, you're shining more. The more that you can get to know yourself, and even if, again, you're just working on maybe a small skill in one arena of your life, it matters. You're an example to someone else. So, being able to pull up on that perspective, okay, what's the outcome if I try something? And again, when I mentioned confidence, usually confidence does not precede an act. Usually you
Mm.
get confidence from doing, from the action. So being brave does not mean that you're not scared. And again, another nugget that I use with my kids all the time. Being brave doesn't mean that you're not scared. It means that you're scared and you're going to do it anyways. So
Mm.
anyone can do it. Okay?
Wow.
So bravery, number 2.
Well, if I look at those last two that we talked about, whether you are focused on the process or the outcome, you just develop different skills. So
Mhm.
so it's, I love it how this will meet you where you're at. You can work on skills wherever your current mindset is and how you operate, but you always have the ability to pivot based on the things that are important to you, and that rises up in your priority. So I think that that's super cool. And I 100% agree with, confidence and that feeling, which is can be described in many different ways. It's usually after you've done something where you can reflect back and go, wow. So like bravery is showing up way more in social situations for me, in being with different groups of people, just because I'm really quiet. Normally, I'm really introverted. So that to me, that's an act of bravery. And I
Mhm.
never would have called it that before, but it is. And I love it that I'm learning and continuing to develop because I'm not done yet. So even if you feel like you're like just a grown up, I'm a grown up, I've been a grown up, all of it keeps changing. We're living in a world that keeps changing. And I never want to forget that, because then everything is still exciting. It's
Mhm.
still exciting. So I love all that. Okay, let's bring it home. So the last and the most amount of people said they landed on this character strength that I'm not sure I would have would have guessed, but listen to this, you guys. It's self-regulation. Self-regulation. Like that's the thing that seemed to be elusive, that whether they were maintaining or they really tried to, really improve their mental health and well-being. Is self-regulation is they want more self-control. So they want the ability to have what, like, maybe it's called discipline, the ability to feel their feelings, experience the impulses. Maybe there's bad habits in language or how they go about their day, but to have some say in that. And that comes back to so much of it, Claire. How often have we said about being able to respond instead of react?
Mm.
And and there's a reason why when I feel kind of vindicated. We come around to that because it's a thing. And so to have people come through another doorway and say, we're going to look at it from self-regulation, but that's still the same as being able to respond to something as opposed to react to it. And then to be able to make choices that best fit your goals, needs, wants, desires, and all of that. So, how often do we see that in the nutrition space? When people with their eating habits or their drinking habits or their exercise, I gotta start now. Like all of this, having the ability to have a thought, have a desire, and then act on it, and to be able to have, instead of the other way around where I'm just acting a certain way and it's like incongruent with what my thoughts and my needs are. I just think that that is uh, a way to put it where it has tentacles that are spread throughout my life. That self-regulation, whether like if you would describe yourself, if you're listening, and it's like, the emotional part. That's the part that I really would like some self-regulation. I feel like I feel really high and sometimes I feel really low. That may be your thing. For some of us, it's the behaviors of straight up physical health that then impact your wellness. But all of this is interrelated, like it all is, because we're not living on an island, even in our own bodies. But to have it be where I really want to have some say in what I'm doing, I want to follow through with the thing I said I wanted to do. Remember, that's the vote for your future self. And I love that language because it's sometimes I can't see Bob, beyond this, which I'm putting my hands in front of my face. But it really is a matter of being able to have the wherewithal to have some discipline, to be able to follow through with it, and to be able to do that in whatever context that I feel I need to either maintain my mental health and wellness or really upgrade it from where I'm at. So what did I miss on that, Claire? The self-regulation is a big one, and I don't know if I can capture all of it just because it feels big to me and yet really baseline all at the same time.
I love how you parsed out that it can be habits, it can be behaviors, but it can also be emotions. I think it is like like you just said, it's big, um, but it is doable. And so, one of the things that we can do, you've heard us talk about before, and we are actually just talking about bringing it back
Mm,
next week. Tracking, tracking what you're doing. That ties into the perseverance and the
yep,
consistency, but also that type of regulation and self-control, because if you've got that accountability right in front of you, you're going to be more likely to keep going because you will get that little hit of dopamine from the ooh, I did it, I followed through with this.
yeah.
So I think that even though it is such a big topic, we can break it down into pieces that make it easier for us, because that's what this is all about. We talk about tips and strategies, but they're not meant to be these huge boulders that we're always hacking at and it's so hard. So one of the things that we can talk about is this habit tracker. And I'm actually going to link to one of the pages of our habit tracker in the show notes again if you want to print it out or at least look at a template for it because it's something that I do. Mom, I know it's something
Yeah.
that you do and I think we're going to talk about it maybe again next week. Maybe hey, who wants to hear it? We'll do an update on how our habit
Well,
tracking is going.
I have to say something about that. Like, I don't bring it up because I'm living it.
Mm,
I do it all the time. And and so it's not like I have to make sure I mention it because it's just interwoven to my day. So it's a real statement that if you hear like habit tracking, you're like, which I have been in my life. Where I'm like, I don't know, do that. It is short, manageable ways to reinforce behavior so that you start to build your self-regulation. You start to have an idea of where you're at and you start to see the needle start to move. Almost it's almost like glacier, but it is moving. And now it's just second habit, second nature. So I don't even think about mentioning it, which I don't want to do a disservice to you guys, but it really is, it's a thing.
mhm,
And it is a way that sometimes I have found myself in different periods of my life where I talk about that I feel a certain way, but I just talk about it. I don't have a way out. I don't have a way around. I don't have a way through. And I haven't felt like I had a way to set into action, a way to make a change that felt empowering. And we know enough now to know like this is one way to do it.
mm,
Like I think everybody at some point tracks a bit, just to know yourself more. What do your
yep,
habits look like?
mhm,
Takes like 2 seconds, and it's so interwoven. So that's the point I wanted to make is that I don't even mention it anymore because it's just woven into my day. And I know I'm not a robot. Some days I have days where I like what I see and I'm in alignment, and some days I see I'm starting to veer off. I just get information. And I live in a way now where I am enjoying the process. I'm building all this perseverance. I am curious about what's like all of these things that we're talking about are related to me because I have more of an idea of what I'm doing and where I'm spending my time. And that's through habit tracking. I almost wish it was something different. Just because it seems so simple. So if you're anything like me, where sometimes I'll overthink it and say, well, it must be more elusive than that. It
mm.
must be bigger. There's got to be something from ancient wisdom. I don't think that's it. I think that I'm gonna look and keep my curiosity light on and go, maybe it's this thing over here that's really easy that you can implement all the time and then celebrate along the way, knowing that if you're putting effort in, even in little amounts, that you will see movement, you will get understanding, you will build all of these really great attributes and ways to be in the world that are in alignment with who you want to be. So there's that.
And hey, like you mentioned, you get to know yourself better, and
Yeah, it's the name of the game.
it's the name of the game. That's
Yeah,
the Joyful Rebels way.
yeah,
So, for you listening, were you surprised by any of these? So, we talked about 5 mental strengths people wished for, the top 5 most common responses, and then 5 strategies, small, simple strategies that you can do to work towards those. So, if you were surprised or one of them really stood out to you, let us know. We would love to hear from you. Until next time, Rebels.